everyone. It's Kristen Hawkins, and welcome to this very special episode of the Explicitly Pro-Life podcast. I'm here with Autumn Higashi, our student spokesperson. I don't know what else your title is.
Yeah, student turned employee.
Student turned employee. Yes, pretty much. Former fellow. You've had many titles over the years, but I've actually asked Autumn to pretty much guest host this episode because we are behind the stage right now of the March for Life. I will be running around like crazy normally, passing out signs, meeting Students for Life leaders, talking with other pro-life leaders, conducting media interviews. And so I have asked Autumn to take a camera, and we've snuck her behind stage, don't tell the march, and to meet with all of our friends in the pro-life movement and to ask them some questions as we're leading up into a post-Roe America and kind of get their views. So I can't wait to actually listen to this episode myself after you do all of your reporting being snuck here behind the scenes.
Well, I hope I'm a worthy stand-in. I'm excited to sit down. You know, I think today is such a day of anticipation. We've all been waiting for this. And so just to get to hear what brings people to the March for Life is what I'm so excited to hear. So thank you for trusting me to take
I'm
over
a little
the podcast
nervous
for the day.
I'm a little nervous. The reviews are going to come in if we want the redhead more than you. And then it'll be Explicitly Pro-Life hosted by Autumn Higashi here pretty soon. I mean, that's how everything happens at Students for Life. I don't even hold a bullhorn anymore. Someone was telling me in the media the other day, they're like, oh, will you be holding your bullhorn?
Students too well.
I was like, we trained our students, and now they don't even let me hold the bullhorn anymore. I think it's just like, you're too old, Kristen. So enjoy this episode. I know I'm certainly looking forward to coming back and tuning in later.
Hello, everybody. My name is Autumn Higashi, and today I am hosting the Explicitly Pro-Life podcast, usually hosted by Kristen Hawkins, but today she's pretty busy with the March for Life, so she is off doing a million other things, so I am stepping in for her today, which I'm thrilled about because I have the honor of sitting down with amazing people that are here today for the March for Life, and so I am sitting here with Chrissy. If you want to introduce yourself, tell us who you are.
I'm Sissy Graham Lynch, and I am here with Samaritan's Purse and the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association, and it is so awesome to be here. You know, the sun is out, it is shining, the crowd is gathering.
It's still cold.
It is cold, but the sun is great, and it's so awesome to see the crowd coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just love to ask you, you know, why are you pro-life, and what continues to drive that force of activism, of speaking out? You know, so many people would probably consider themselves to be pro-life, but I think there's a difference between being pro-life and doing something about it. So for you, what's the motivation to continue to speak out?
Well, as you say that speaks to me. It was 2 years ago that I came to the March for Life, and I went to the Students for Life Summit the following day, and it forever impacted my life because I was a millennial. I kind of thought Roe versus Wade was the law of the land, and maybe we could do things to chip away, but I just never saw it as my issue. I worked with Samaritan's Purse and the Billy Graham Evangelistic Association all over the world advocating for women and children, but I sat silent on the sidelines here in the United States. And so I was that person you're speaking to, that I might have voted pro-life, but I did nothing until I came here. And I saw a generation rising up. It wasn't just all old people, it was young people like yourself that for the first time in history in the last 49 years, you had grace, you had truth, you have science on your side. And it was a generation that was rising up saying, we're not going to allow it anymore, not on our watch. So it was you and your, friends and everybody that inspired me, that I sat shameful for so long. So why do I do it? Is because this is the basic human right. It starts here. If we can't advocate for life here, how can I advocate? I have a daughter, an 8-year-old. How can I advocate later in the future for her if we don't start here at the basic? That God created us in his image. With each person has a purpose. And Satan will use it and destroy our lives and tell a young woman she can't do it all. Tell us as we grow up that we can't do it all. Because God's got a plan, and he will use us in a mighty way. And every life has value.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important for us, I think coming to an event like this, right? Although it may be the beginning, right? There's still work to do in our own communities. When you're here shoulder to shoulder, you're reminded that you can be an advocate for life. I think so many of us stick ourselves in a box to say, I'm pro-life, but I can't be somebody, right? I can't be an activist. I can't be an advocate. But the March for Life and the Pro-Life Summit, I think, equips students for them to know their own power in their own communities, which is beautiful to see them blossom and to do so many things all across the country. It's so inspiring.
Yeah, I'll be talking a little bit about that tomorrow night as we close the event tomorrow, but is that some of us ask, like, who are we? God, who are we to use? And God said it's not about, he just wants your availability. It's not who you are, but whose you are, and you're God's. And he will use you if you're available. Even in your communities, a lady I came with here today who's spoken a lot of the pro-life movement into my life, she just is in her community serving. One girl at a time through a community center, getting her involved in Bible study. It just takes one of us with one relationship with one woman.
Absolutely. So last question, just to close this out. What would you say to every pro-lifer in America as we are on the brink of the Dobbs v. Jackson case, and an America in which Roe v. Wade could be reversed?
Once again, as a millennial, I never thought this day would come. And I think we have to be in prayer. This is powerful. The spiritual warfare that this country is going to go under in the next couple of months, if Roe is overturned, which we are praying, and we are so hopeful for that. But the hard work doesn't stop.
Right.
That's when the army of Students for Life, that's when you activate, and that's when you continue to work in your communities. Because it's not about making it illegal. It's about making it unthinkable in this nation, and that's going to be the harder job. And that comes to this generation, speaking one-on-one with your friends, coffee groups, in your classrooms, being bold. So keep praying and being faithful, and not to grow weary in this fight.
Yeah. Well, Sissy, thank you so much. It's such an honor to just hear your heart and your conviction, as well as just being here. I think it's so important for people to show up, whether it's cold, whether it's rainy, whether it feels like an inconvenience. So I applaud your conviction and your continued dedication to this movement.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. All right, everybody, I am sitting down with our next guest, Bobby Schindler. If you would just tell us who you are, what your story is, why you're pro-life. We'd love to hear about it.
Sure. Bobby Schindler, my sister was Terry Schiavo, and about a little over 16 years ago, some of you might remember, my sister we were in a battle with her husband. We were trying to care for Terry. She was disabled. She had a brain injury, and her husband went to the court and seeking permission to remove her food and water, her feeding tube. And our family was against it. So we fought him in a very long, protracted legal battle that really gained not just here in the United States, but international publicity.
Wow.
And unfortunately, we lost. Terry was starved and dehydrated to death in 2005. And in response to that, our family started the Terry Schiavo Life and Hope Network. And since that time, we've been really serving as patient advocates, helping other patients and families in crisis that are faced or confronted with a similar situation that our family was faced with, and we try to help them use our resources to help them protect their loved ones.
Wow, beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this day is very monumental for a lot of people. I think that it's really empowering to come together with so many people, and I think the most beautiful thing about the pro-life movement is there's so many different ways to be pro-life. There's so many different areas and aspects to get involved. We have student activists. We have people that are, working with pregnant mothers who are looking for assistance, to combat the abortion industry. We have people that are door knocking. So I think it's just beautiful, all these different pieces of the pro-life movement. And yet today we come together to stand shoulder to shoulder to fight for life. So thank you for all that you do in your community and all across the country. We've been asking each guest that we have here today, if you could say one thing to every pro-lifer in America right now as we await the decision of the Dobbs case, knowing that we could be very close to a post-Roe America, what would you say to them?
Well, obviously we're encouraged that this will happen, but we have to keep fighting.
Right.
I mean, there is we all know there's an assault on the dignity of life. It's not going to stop even if this is overturned.
Right.
Obviously, we know it'll go back to the states, so we're going to have to continue really fighting and protecting the dignity of the human person, the unborn, people like my sister, the brain injured, the elderly, because it really affects not just the unborn, but we're seeing every day it affects other medically vulnerable individuals and the attack on their human dignity. Right. So, yes, it is encouraging what's happening, but I think we all know that we're going to have to keep fighting, keep our resolve.
It's not over yet.
Right. We have to keep praying. I think prayer is and staying close to our relationship with Christ. Because I think a lot of that's what's happening in our society today. We don't recognize the divine dignity of each one of us. So yeah, I think we just have to know. We know we're just going to continue fighting for those that are less vulnerable and be a voice for them.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your dedication to life, and for using all that you have to speak up and to advocate for all aspects and areas of life. It's really an honor to sit down with you and chat.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you for taking the time to sit down with us. I hope you have a good day. Stay warm out there.
Yes.
We'll keep going in here, but thank you again so much for your time.
Thank you for the time to speak with you. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good. It is such an honor to sit down with our next guest, Father Frank. Thank you so much for joining us here
It's a
in this
pleasure.
tent.
It's a
Hopefully we
pleasure.
can provide you a little bit of warmth
Oh,
for
this is
a few
perfect.
minutes.
This is a great start, actually.
Awesome. Well, for those who maybe don't know you, if you just want to
Yes.
share your story quickly and tell us why you're pro-life, why are you
You
so
know,
passionate?
This is my 47th March for Life. I came here as a 17-year-old high school student in 1976 for the third annual march. And that's what impelled me into the pro-life movement. The diversity of the crowd, the intensity, the commitment. And I was in public schools. I wasn't particularly involved in the church or anything. But in that same year, 76, I got interested in the pro-life movement and also in ministry. I felt like my call to the priesthood. Long story short, I now have been able to devote my entire ministry, my full-time work, to ending abortion. I gotten permission to do that back in 1993. I began to lead the group called Priests for Life, which is not just for priests and not just for Catholics, but really for anyone who wants to help end the killing. We mobilize the churches, and I do that on a full-time basis, speaking, writing, broadcasting, traveling, doing seminars, working with groups like Students for Life, and just trying to awaken America that it's time to protect these babies.
Yeah, I was 17 my first March. Actually, I came here with Students for Life of America. I got involved when I was 16, and Students for Life kind of plucked me up and said, you know what? You want to care? You want to be a pro-life advocate? You want to do pro-life work? And I just said, yep, I feel a calling on my life.
Yeah.
And they just grabbed me and equipped me with everything I needed, and I've been to the March for Life ever since.
And
every
many
single
people
year.
feel that calling, and it makes so much sense. People feel a calling to help the poor.
Yeah.
People feel a calling to educate children. Some feel a calling to take care of prisoners. Well, why doesn't it make sense that people would feel a calling to protect the unborn and then be able to do it, whether on a part-time or a full-time basis?
Right.
We need to encourage people to respond to that call when they feel it.
Absolutely. And I think today is a good kickstart to that. Like you
It
said,
is.
you come to the March for Life and you can feel it in the air. You can feel the energy.
And what you're feeling is a cross-section of America, because these are not people who are just coming to a march for a day. These are people who 365 days of the year are advocating for these children, reaching out to their moms and dads to provide alternatives to abortion, providing healing for those wounded by abortion, educating people about the issue, electing pro-life candidates, passing pro-life laws, mobilizing pro-life students. These people are the movement, and they represent the movement, and it represents a cross-section of America. You'll see babies in carriages, you'll see people in wheelchairs, and everybody in between. You'll see people of every ethnic background, every religious background, every political persuasion, and some marches are very homogenous.
Yeah.
Some marches, frankly, look like a bunch of kooks. But this is America. This is a beautiful cross-section of America today.
Yeah, and I think it's a beautiful picture of that carrying of the torch, right? There are people here that have been fighting this fight since Roe v. Wade went into law, who didn't give up, who continued despite years and years of what felt like, no progress. Roe v. Wade was still in it, but when you look at the years by, the things that were happening regardless of Roe v. Wade, in communities, things were changing. Hearts were changing.
And we came here, we have marched through the Clinton years and the Obama years. We have marched during years when everything was against us politically.
Right.
We've marched in other years, whenever Republicans have been in the majority in the House or the Senate, right around the March for Life, they would pass some kind of pro-life measure, as a way of an encouragement to the movement. Now, this year, there's a strange mixture of marching against the tide, because we have the most pro-abortion administration and the most pro-abortion Congress.
Right.
However, we have a great confidence this year in what's happening in the courts. So we think we're on the verge of a great victory.
Right.
And you feel that encouragement in the crowd here today.
Right. The pro-abortion Guttmacher Institute said themselves 2021 was the most anti-abortion year they've ever seen in legislation. And for us, that's a win. That's exactly what we want.
It is a win.
And 2022 is going to be better.
Well, some people talk about, the abortion issue would return to the states, if Roe is reversed. It's already in the states.
Right.
And this is where so much of the momentum is happening.
Right.
The people in the states are working to protect the unborn, and it's bringing various measures right up to the point of implementation.
Right.
Except then they find a blockade there from the courts.
Yeah.
But that blockade is starting to crack.
Absolutely. Well, just to finish this off, I have one more question for you. And that is, if you could tell every single pro-lifer in America one thing, knowing that we are potentially at the end of Roe v. Wade, awaiting the decision of Dobbs v. Jackson and seeing a reversal of Roe, what would you say to them?
The work is just beginning. The work is just beginning. We're seeing the fruit of work we have done for decades. But remember, the unborn are always going to need advocates.
Yes.
Their moms and dads are always going to need help. Those wounded by abortion are always going to need healing. So don't go anywhere is what I would say. Let's get ready to double and triple our work for these babies and their families.
And that's why I'm so excited for our Pro-Life Summit. We have the march where we have the anticipation, the momentum, and then tomorrow we are going to tell them exactly how they can bring it back into their communities.
Give them their marching orders.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking a few minutes and hanging out with us back here. I hope you stay warm out there.
Yes.
Excited to see all the work that you continue to do.
Well, greetings from all of us at Priests for Life to all of you at Students for Life. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
All right.
Our next guest that I have the honor of sitting down with is Tony McFadden.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome.
How are you?
I'm good. Good. I saw you brought your family with you to the march.
I did.
That is so fun.
We're missing
so
one. We're missing the littlest one, but we have
Next
3
year.
out of 4 is not bad.
That's beautiful. That's so amazing. Well, for anyone listening who maybe doesn't know you or your story, if you could just briefly tell us who you are and why you're pro-life.
Well, I won't tell you the whole story because I'm going to be speaking later, but I am post-abortive, but I'm healed and I'm free, but I still live with the regret. And I share my story because if I can save someone from not going through what I went through, I'll share my story over and over again. And if I can let other women know the truth, if they ever enter into that kind of situation, I want those thoughts to be in their mind that what I needed to hear, that you can do this and that this crisis isn't going to stay forever, that you can overcome that. And women are so much more powerful than I think our society gives us credit for.
Absolutely. I mean, you listen to what mainstream media, how they paint abortion, how they paint women who are seeking abortion, it's understanding, why so many women feel like they're put in that position because that's where the abortion industry wants them. Planned Parenthood wants them scared and alone and feeling as if they don't have the strength to do it, right? And I think that, it's the most powerful thing about the pro-life movement is seeing community members stand alongside women, many of which they don't know, to say, I will be here to help you. I will be here to help you. I think it's beautiful. And your voice is so needed in this movement. It's so powerful. Anytime you speak, I sit there thinking, wow, I am so thankful for her.
I think the same thing about you, for the younger generation looking at you, being so bold and talking about this is powerful because I have 3 young children and that's who they're going to look to. And so I'm thankful for your stance as well.
And I think, we look around and the people driving the force here, many of which are high school, college students. I remember the first time I came to the March for Life, I got out of the car and I looked around and I was speechless that not only were there so many pro-lifers here, there were so many pro-lifers that were my age. It's that sense of camaraderie. It's that sense of unity that you feel here marching shoulder to shoulder with your peers. It's powerful. We hear pro-lifers are just all old white men. No. If you've ever been to the March for Life, you know that is not true.
That is not true at all.
Yeah. So. Well, today, if you could tell every pro-lifer in America one thing, as we await the decision of Dobbs and are closer than ever to a reversal of Roe v. Wade, what would you say to them?
Well, obviously, I pray that it is overturned, but I'm not just relying on that. We need to continue to fight for these preborn babies because even if it is overturned, there are still going to be women who face crisis pregnancies, and we still need to be there for them. We still need to be a voice for them and to combat the lies that are still going to be thrown at them. So we still need to be who we're called to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm hoping today, sparks that in a lot of people. I've heard many stories of people saying, I went to the March for Life on a whim and I left completely changed, with a conviction I had never had before. And I feel that even now, being in the movement for a few years, every time I come to the March for Life, I leave so encouraged and so refreshed to say, you know what, I can do this in my community. I'm not going to listen to the mainstream media telling me that I'm alone, because I am not. I'm not going to listen to the mainstream media telling me that I don't have a voice or that I am in the unpopular position, because it's not true. And I think coming here reminds us of that. And it's just so beautiful, so empowering. And tomorrow I'm so excited for the National Pro-Life Summit. To bring this momentum and then know what to do with it, know how to bring it into our community. Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down.
To you. It's so fun.
I'm so happy we were able to grab you for a few minutes. I'm sure you're very busy today, so we appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I am so honored to sit down with our next guest, Dr. Alveda King. Welcome.
Hi,
Thank you
Autumn.
for being here.
It's so good to be here with you. You're one of my heroes. Kristen is. And the post-Roe generation. I'm so excited.
Well, I hope I'm a worthy substitute of Kristen Hawkins. It's pressure taking on her podcast.
It really is. And, it's very cold here. And as we came through, I saw your whole team passing out the signs so diligently. I'm just enthusiastic about the energy and the promise that's ahead of us.
Well, thank you so much. We are excited to be here. The adrenaline, I think, is keeping us pumped up, allowing us to continue to get out there. So for those of you people listening who don't know you, would you mind just introducing who you are, maybe your story, and why you're so pro-life? What drives that passion of yours to be so outspoken?
I am Alveda King, and I am, of course, pro-life. I'm womb to tomb. Once the baby's born, take care of the family. That's part of my message. I'm the founder of Speak for Life. I've been pro-life since somewhere between 83 and 84. I had abortions myself and a miscarriage and all of that. And then with my experience with the Lord, gave me a question that I repeat all the time. A woman has the right to choose what she does with her body. The baby is not her body.
Right.
How can the dream survive if we murder our children? So I've been very active for many, many years, meeting young people like yourself. And truth has to be told, of course, in every generation. But we have discovered that it has to be told now in every decade. Because if you wait 3 decades, people forget the message. So with the Students for Life, for example, as you rise up in each decade and then in each generation, the message continues. And I say this kind of tongue-in-cheek, but it's true. In the Sanctity of Life movement, we have more young people because we keep our babies. And so it's very important to proclaim the truth.
Yes.
And Students for Life across America is such an amazing group. And I just thank God for you.
Well, we are so appreciative of your support and all that you do. We have so many students all across the country, and it's just so encouraging to see all that they're doing in their own communities. We have many of them here today, and we will be training them tomorrow at our National Pro-Life Summit. And so we're just so thrilled to have everybody in the same place. For a lot of it, we're so spread out.
I think I'll be at the summit tomorrow. I think I'll be there too. So,
well, we are very excited. I know we have a lot of students that have really been anticipating the opportunity to hear you speak, to hear your story. I know that you are an inspiration to so many of us, to myself, and to so many of our students. I did want to ask you if you could say one thing to every pro-lifer in America as we await the decision of Dobbs v. Jackson and we are closer to a post-Roe America than we have ever been, what would you say to them?
Be kind. Proclaim the message of life. Keep hope alive. Faith, hope, and love moving ahead. And I'm very excited, very grateful for each and every one.
Well, we are so appreciative of you. Thank you so much for taking a few minutes to come sit back here with us. Big day. I'm sure everyone is very busy, so we appreciate your time. we appreciate your heart and your conviction, and for you to continue to speak up and do all the work that you do. So thank you so much.
God bless.
Thank you. Our next guest that I have the pleasure of sitting down with is Arnold Colbreth. Hello. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. How's it been? You know, the adrenaline, the feeling, the March for Life, right?
Yes.
I think this is a much anticipated day for many of us.
It's really exciting. This is probably my 13th or 14th March. And but this one's different,
right,
particularly with the Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health.
I know every time I come to the March for Life, I think that I'm mentally prepared, and then I get here and it just still blows my mind. Every year that I'm here, it just always feels so encouraging, so empowering, powerful, unique. So it's such an honor every single year that I get to be here, shoulder to shoulder with my pro-life generation.
Yes.
Well, for those who don't know you, if you want to share your story and why you're pro-life, why you feel convicted to continue to speak out.
Okay, well, I serve as the the National Director of Ministry Engagement with the Douglas Leadership Institute, and let's see, my wife is post-abortive from 2 years before we met, so I've just kind of been on this journey with her, helping her to find help, hope, and healing.
Right.
And when I was a 7th grader, my father had the late Dr. Jack Wilkie to come in and speak at our church. Many people don't know that Dr. Wilkie kind of started the pro-life movement, along with a host of others.
Yeah.
But I got to, listen to him speak as a 7th grader. And then fast forward to 2007, he hired me to be his National Director of Urban Outreach Development before Douglas Leadership Institute.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. So today, so many of us, I think, are ready to serve. You know, I've heard from many people today that the March for Life was the kickstart for a lot of them of what made them passionate, what made them called. And I think to everyone who doesn't have the opportunity to come maybe this year, I'd encourage anyone. I think it's something that you need to experience as a pro-lifer, whether it's a local march, the national march.
Yes.
There's something special about it. There's a feeling that you leave with ready, because I think so many of us, we're in our own communities, and a lot of times we feel alone. Whether we have a background of, being pro-life, whether our families don't agree with us, whether we've struggled, whether you're post-abortive, whether you have a loved one who's post-abortive. I think there's so many things that have the potential to hold us back.
Yes.
And you come to the March for Life and you realize it does not matter your walk of life. It does not matter your age. You can be passionate about life and you can speak up. And so it's just, I'm sure you can speak to it as you've been here so many years in a row of just the power that's here today, right?
Yes.
So I wanted to ask you if you could tell every single pro-lifer in America today one thing as we await the decision of Dobbs v. Jackson and we are closer to a post-Roe America than ever, what would you like to say to them?
I would say to be encouraged. I would say to continue to keep our focus on the Lord and His power. He's not flinching. He's not fearful. He's not scratching his head. He is still in control. Continue to pray for an end to abortion. Pray for the Supreme Court and this decision that we should expect to see around June or July of this year, and do something. And like you were saying, when I say do something, it can be at the local level, the state level, the national level, whatever the case may be. Everybody has influence.
Absolutely.
Be it Facebook, social media, TikTok, Instagram, whatever. You can post, you can tweet. And yes, people are going to disagree with you. Let me share this strategy that I share everywhere I go. And that is shift from focusing on winning an argument to sowing a seed. Right? The goal is to sow a seed to get somebody thinking about something that might not really germinate until years later. So many times we get caught in these back and forth, intense debates and arguments with people trying to win an argument. All that's gonna do is frustrate you.
And them.
Sow that seed, keep it moving.
Absolutely. I think that's so powerful. I think that a lot of this is a mission, right? That we are having these conversations and we are bringing light to such an important issue that I think that's such an important reminder that what's our goal here? What's our purpose? Why are we speaking out, right? Is it to ruffle feathers? Is it to prove people that we are right? Or is it to build a connection, to build a relationship? You don't know where somebody else may be coming from. But
and I'll
planting
tell
that
you,
seed.
I remember when Roe versus Wade, was announced. I remember sitting in a family room with my family watching Walter Cronkite, give that statement, and he was crying.
Yeah.
You can YouTube it. He said it's a day that will live in infamy. So I've known a world where there wasn't legal abortion. Your generation has never known that, and my grandchildren have never known that. I have an 8-year-old and a soon-to-be 3-year-old granddaughter. I march for them.
Yeah.
I may not be here to see the total fruition of all of this, but let's continue to move forward.
Yeah, and like you said, we have a Heavenly Father that's in control.
Yes.
And I think if we focus on our own timeline, we'll lose sight of what He's doing in this movement.
Yes.
And so to fight, but also rest in His control and His power is a very important reminder to all of us. So thank you so much for coming and spending a few minutes with us and sitting down and getting to chat. It's such an honor to hear your passion and your heart for this movement. And thank you so much for all the work
Thank you.
that you
Can
do.
I pray before I go?
Yeah, absolutely.
Amen. Father, in the name of Jesus, thank you for Students for Life of America and just a platform that you've given them. Thank you for Kristen Hawkins, and thank you for everyone that will watch this broadcast, Father, of whatever generation, whatever nationality, ethnicity that they are. Strengthen them, bless them, encourage them, and use them to be voices for life. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, our next guest. I haven't seen you in a while.
It's been a little bit. I'm
Yes.
excited to be back together here at the March for Life.
Well, for those of you who don't know, I'm sitting here with David B. Wright. Such an honor to see you again. All of the times that we have got to cross paths in the pro-life movement. But today I'd really love to just dive into, who you are, why you're pro-life, and why you continue with this conviction to not only be pro-life, but to speak up about it and to do something about it.
Yeah. Well, for a lot of my life, I was not pro-life. I just really was passive. I grew up in a home that was Christian, but really never talked about abortion. I grew up in a little church that never talked about abortion. So it was just off my radar.
Right.
So when I went off to college, I moved to Texas. I went to Texas A&M, and I was surrounded by a lot of Christians, evangelical Catholic Christians, who were on fire with their faith for Christ, and it helped me to make my faith my own. But also, they helped me to understand finally what abortion was, how it destroyed the life of a preborn child, how it hurt women, and how it was really just devastating our culture. And so at that point, I became, in college, I would call it a passive pro-lifer. I was opposed to abortion, but it doesn't affect me, so I don't want to do anything about it, or so I thought. And then I met a girl. And you know that girl. It's my wife, Margaret. We've been married now 29 and a half years. But Margaret grew up in a pro-life home in Corpus Christi, Texas. And in Corpus Christi, there had been several abortion providers, and her parents would take her and her sisters every weekend to pray outside local abortion facilities. And one by one, those facilities closed their doors as hundreds of Christians across different faith traditions came together. And so when Margaret would tell me these stories, I'd be like, oh no, do I have to do something? But we were living in a town, College Station, Texas, where at the time there was not an abortion facility. So I thought, I'm off the hook.
Right.
But when the news broke in our community in 1998 that Planned Parenthood was going to open its first ever abortion center, we realized we have to do something.
Right.
And so how I first got involved was Margaret dragged me somewhat reluctantly to a church meeting that was being held. And more than 400 Christians came out that night to talk about how do we try to prevent this. And unfortunately, our community was not able to stop it. Planned Parenthood did open, but we began to get involved in local pro-life efforts, began to pray at the site where the facility was being built. We began to reach out and educate others. We began to grow in our own pro-life convictions ourselves. And that really was how I became pro-life. And it was through that I eventually led that local organization, the Coalition for Life. And it was there that we started the effort 40 Days for Life, which eventually took on its own life and spread into a worldwide initiative that is spread now to more than 600 cities across 80 nations. So it's been an amazing journey.
Yeah, well, my mom actually leads the force of 40 Days for Life.
I know that. That's awesome.
And I think 40 Days for Life actually nominated us the worst campaign they'd ever seen in terms of what had happened to us. We live in Washington State, and there is something about that Planned Parenthood. Our community hates when we are on that sidewalk, and we have had just unbelievable circumstances of things that have happened to us, and yet my mom still, if there is no one else out there, she brings her minivan, she parks on the side of the road, she homeschools her children out of the minivan and prays at Planned Parenthood.
It's amazing.
Unbelievable. And so it's been such a blessing to our community. We've had some just unbelievable circumstances. My mom was there praying one day, and a woman had walked there from a homeless base camp. She was a refugee from Colombia looking for assistance. She was 8 months pregnant. She had just traveled from Colombia and, ended up in a homeless base camp. Her husband was deported, completely alone. She went to Planned Parenthood for help. Didn't have anything for her. But my mom was on that sidewalk praying, and they connected. And within 4 days, my mom had her inside of a maternity home. She had resources for her baby. We threw her a baby shower, and her baby Victoria was in our arms at our Thanksgiving dinner table. Her and Angie, we got to spend time with her. So it's just things you can't even expect, right? Things that aren't even necessarily what's normal to, stand out of Planned Parenthood. You do not know what's going to happen, but there's so much power in bringing the presence of the Lord to such a dark place.
Well,
and so our community
and the
has
other
been so
thing I
blessed.
think this speaks to is the power of one person, right?
Absolutely.
Because each and every one of us have some role in the midst of this great injustice. We have some role to respond to this crisis, to put our faith into action for those of us who are doing it as an expression of our faith. And you never know what God can do to save a life, to impact an eternal soul, to shut down an abortion facility, to help workers out of the abortion industry. I mean, there's so many different things. But I think for every person who's hearing the sound of our voices right now, they should say, what can I do? What are the gifts, the talents, the skills, the experiences that I've had?
Yeah.
How can I put them into action? And how can I use those to make my mark, to do the thing that I'm uniquely supposed to do in the pro-life movement?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think you alone are a testament to that. You met a girl, you fell in love, and you guys just decided, when it came to your community, right? You guys were two community members that decided to do something, not knowing where that would lead.
Right.
I relate to that. I was a 16-year-old girl, and I thought, I'm going to make a video because I'm passionate and I feel like this message is wrong. And God took that and said, okay, well then I'm calling you, Autumn, and you're going to do this for, who knows how long. I've been full-time in the pro-life movement ever since that day. And it's just such a blessing to see how God will take that obedience and to reward and to equip his people with what they need. There's so many times where I have felt completely unprepared. I do not know what to say. I do not know what I'm doing. And yet God continued to provide for me, even though I probably, I didn't know much, going into it, but I felt called.
An important key in your story, Autumn, and I remember when you first made that video and it blew up, and I was just in awe as I saw the video and then just seeing how God used you in your growth from that. But it really began, as you said, because there was something that you saw that broke your heart, this injustice of abortion. For me, an abortion center was opening in my town. That broke my heart because I realized this is going to harm women. It's going to take the lives of children. But we turned that heartbreak into hope. You shared a message that helped people to find hope. There's something I can do about this. I led a local group and then started an effort called 40 Days for Life because it was something I said, there's got to be hope in the midst of this heartbreak. And so for each of us, as we look at, 65, 70 million lives that have been lost to abortion in the United States, the numbers are staggering. We don't even know the magnitude. It should rip our hearts apart. But from that, we should say, okay, what can I do about that? And to look at the environment, the seismic shift we've had in America in the last few months, and to realize this next 6 months could be the most important 6 months in the entire history of the pro-life movement. So we've got to find our role and we've got to get into action now more than ever.
Yeah, and I think Christians have a tendency to think, well, I know what abortion is, and I care so much I can't even think about it, right? I'm pro-life enough. I can't even open my eyes to that. It's too heartbreaking. I know that I'm pro-life, and no one needs to change my mind, right? I'm good. I'm settled. And I think that if we can't even open our eyes to it, it's proof that we need to open them and open everyone else's even more. That if it's so horrifying that you want to close your eyes and turn away from it, then that means it must be bad enough for us to really do something. And so I think just an encouragement and a conviction that we need to open our hearts to is maybe this is something that we are feeling called to, and that we do have to do something, no matter the heartbreak, no matter the pain that it may bring. The pro-life movement is very heartbreaking, but more importantly, it's hopeful, like you said. And we, as Christians too, should trust that our Father can take something this horrible and redeem it, that he can bring light to this movement. People who have been fighting for so many years, I'm sure everyone has, for at least a period of time, felt, I can't do this anymore. Nothing's changing. I'm not seeing any difference. And that's because a lot of times we go by our own timeline. We need to remember that we have a Heavenly Father that knows where the end of this is.
He's got this.
He's got it in the bag. He knows the plan. And he is just calling his people to put them in place to prepare for when he is going to put an end to the killing of innocent preborn children. That day is coming. And as pro-lifers, we need to be ready. We need to be equipped. And decades down the road, when people ask, where were you when it was happening? I want to be able to say, this is where I was, and I think that as pro-lifers, we need to do that. We need to be ready.
That's right. Well, we're sitting right here on the National Mall in Washington, D.C., and right behind us are some of the Smithsonians. And in the American History Museum, if you walk through there, you'll see the lunch counters where the sit-ins happened during the Civil Rights Movement. In the Woolworths, and you can go there and you can imagine the people who are willing to do the uncomfortable to change the culture. And they did that. And one day, when abortion is fully ended, the Smithsonian and other places are going to be memorializing this horrific chapter in American history of abortion, but they're also going to be celebrating those who stood up and did something. And the question is, will they be remembering the Autumns? Will they be remembering you? Will they be remembering me? Or will they say, where were you, as you said? What are our children going to say? What are our grandchildren going to say when they ask us, when this great evil spread across the land, what were you doing? We have to be able to answer them. And today we make the decision of the answer that we're going to give them. And from the perspective of being Christians, and I know not everybody listening or watching is Christian necessarily, but many of us are. And we have to understand that, as you said, with God, all things are possible. When we look at the daunting power of Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry and the courts and the judges and the media and big tech, you can sometimes say, we can't possibly win this. We can't. With man, this is impossible. But with God, all things are possible. And that's why we put our trust in him. But also, God uses his people, right?
Absolutely.
We are to be his hands. We are to be his feet in the midst of the struggle. And we have an obligation to be the light in the midst of the darkness. And so as each of us, those who are people of faith, we have to ask ourselves and say, God, what do you want me to do? He has a role for each of us. Your role may be different than mine. My role may be different than yours. Your role may be different than everybody else's, but everybody has a role. And one day you will be able to say proudly to future generations, I was there. I was on the front lines. I did everything I could to be a voice for the voiceless.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you could say one thing to every pro-lifer in America, as we are at the brink, we are so close to seeing Roe reversed, closer than we've ever been, as we await the decision of Dobbs v. Jackson. What would you like to say to them?
Yeah, I would say we still have a lot of work left to do, but do that work because it will bear fruit. Kristen Hawkins and Students for Life for years have been talking about the post-Roe generation. And a lot of people have criticized Students for Life and Kristen for saying that. And here we are now on the verge. Everybody's talking about being post-Roe.
We've been ready.
That's right. Now, whether the Dobbs case will bring that ultimate victory, we pray to God that it does, or whether it will be another vehicle, we know it's not a matter of if Roe will be overturned, it's a matter of when. But we understand that when Roe is overturned, that throws the abortion decision back to the states.
Right.
And there are going to be fights in places like California, in places like Connecticut, places like New York that are going to be more aggressive, more challenging than ever before. As you have Gavin Newsom, the radical governor of California, saying they're going to be an abortion sanctuary and they're going to pay for people to fly in from other states to have abortions. It's going to be challenging. Yep. And a lot of risk is that in the states where abortion may be prohibited, or in states where abortion may be reduced, some people may get complacent without realizing injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere, as Dr. Martin Luther King said. So we have to recognize that we have a lot of work ahead of us. We have to now be more of a voice for the voiceless, speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves than we ever have. And we need to be more engaged in our communities, in our states, than we've ever been before. But in so doing, we will see victories like we've never seen. We will see the tide continue to shift. It's shifting rapidly for the good right now. And we will be a part of seeing a victory that will change the very course of history. So if you have a heartbreak about the crisis of abortion, if you have some hope that with God something good can happen, find your place, get involved, do more now than ever, and you can be a part of not only changing history, but building God's kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us and sharing all your work and your heart in this movement. As always, it's an honor to get to sit down and chat with you about this important issue in our time. I think it's just a day of reflection for many of us, a day of preparation, and a day of motivation to take this feeling that we have, to remember we are standing shoulder to shoulder with our pro-life generation, and then thinking, how can I bring that into my own community? So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks to your entire family. It's done so many great works, and thanks to Students for Life. And it's absolutely an honor and a joy to be with you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You bet.
I have the pleasure and honor of sitting down with Senator Lankford. Thank you so much for being here.
Glad to visit with you.
I appreciate your time as you come back, and I'm sure at least hopefully we can provide you a little warmth for a few minutes.
It's just outside this tent is about 21 degrees, so it's nice to be in this tent for a minute.
Yeah, well, I know you don't have a whole lot of time, so I really appreciate you taking the time to come sit with us. I'd love for you to just briefly share with everyone listening why you're pro-life and why you feel convicted to speak out about it, to do something about it.
So there's some basic things. One is I am alive, and so I celebrate my own life, but the life of every other individual. The second thing is, as a Christian, I believe every person's created in the image of God. They have value and worth that's inherent in them. They're not valuable because I can see them.
Right.
They're valuable because of their God's creation, and that's just extremely important to me personally, and always has been. It's also the science argument. That when you look at a child in the womb, 10 fingers and 10 toes, they're sucking their thumb, they're pushing their feet against their mom's belly. There's every evidence of life there, and for someone to say no, that's not really alive, is just ignoring what's very obvious.
Absolutely. Today I think is a very monumental day. I know every pro-lifer here has been awaiting this day.
Yes.
They've traveled from all over. I'm from Washington State.
That's a long way.
It is. That red eye was a little brutal, but worth it. The moment you step on this ground and you look around and you see so many people, it's so encouraging, because I know as a student, I felt so isolated, so alone for so much of my life, feeling like nobody believes what I believe.
Right.
Nobody has the same passion. Nobody has the same conviction, but they do. And when you come here, you realize that, and you get to stand shoulder to shoulder with your fellow pro-lifers, and it's just so empowering, and getting to see all the people that we see on social media and hear about speak in front of us to encourage us to go back into our own communities and to make a difference is so powerful. So every year I'm here, I'm just amazed.
Get fired up. I met with about 80 students from Oklahoma this morning that are here today, and that was the comment I made to them. To the folks that haven't been to the march before, when you walk into this massive crowd, the first thing you get a glimpse of is, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. True. And you realize there's millions of us around the country that all have this basic belief.
Absolutely.
A child is a child, and they're valuable. And the only difference between the child in the womb and the child outside the womb is time. I'm going to be 40 weeks older from now, 40 weeks from now. That's because I'm growing 40 weeks. That child in the womb, that 40 weeks time period is also a season of their life like it is in mine.
Yeah. Now, if you could tell every pro-lifer in America one thing as we await the decision of Dobbs v. Jackson and are closer to a post-Roe America than we've ever been, what would you like to say to them?
So a couple things is, when the Dobbs decision comes down, I do think we win that decision, that life wins that decision for Dobbs. And I'll be obviously incredibly disappointed if this court doesn't do that. But I think that they will. When they turn that down, it doesn't outlaw abortion in America.
Right.
And people need to not have in their head that ends abortion. That's not true. It moves the conversation to the states, and that state law has to pass. And it's on surgical abortions and on chemical abortions.
Right.
Both of those are going to have to be addressed. That's one. The second thing I would tell everyone is, there's one thing to make abortion illegal. There's another thing to make it unthinkable. And so the constant conversation still has to happen, because in even states like mine in Oklahoma, we will immediately protect the life of every single child. But there'll be states like California, New York, and Illinois that they're going to accelerate abortions in their state. So our conversation with individuals that are considering abortion needs to continue to increase, and not just say, I know it's illegal here, but let me talk to you about why it should be unthinkable for anyone to be able to take the life of a child. So we lean into this even more. The conversation won't end just because the Dobbs decision goes our way. The conversation will need to continue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's why today, we're getting people excited. We're getting people pumped. But then tomorrow we're so excited for our National Pro-Life Summit, where we can train them and say, now here are the tools to go back into your community and to make a difference, and to tell every student that attends that you have the power to make a difference. It doesn't matter your age, who you are, where you come from. If you are passionate, you feel called or convicted, then you can make a difference in your community.
It's not just electing somebody, they go do your job. We each have a job to do in America.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for all the work that you do.
Thanks,
your conviction. I know many of our students look up to you as a strong, bold leader, and so I just applaud your compassion with the movement, as well as your boldness and your dedication. So thank you so much.
No, thank you very much. And hey, if you're just listening in, you can tell, double redhead interview. So
absolutely.
Come on. Yeah.
It's monumental.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. Our next guest here, I have Dr. Francis. It's such a pleasure to sit down. I'm so excited to hear your thoughts that you have with just the approach to this movement, what's so important, why we're here. But first, I'd love to hear about why personally you're pro-life and what motivates you to be outspoken about this movement.
That's a great question. So I'm a board certified OBGYN. So I deliver babies for a living, which is one of the best jobs I could ever imagine having. Such a privilege to be a part of that. But, you know, unfortunately, there are some OBGYNs who aren't pro-life, but I can't imagine being anything other than pro-life as an OBGYN. You know, it's very clear when you're taking care of a pregnant woman that you're taking care of two patients. You know, we do everything that we can to protect both of them. And the only reason we would protect that preborn child is if in fact they're a person deserving of protection.
Right,
and so, you know, the fact is that even though there might be some OBGYNs who might not identify themselves as pro-life, we know in fact that 93% of OBGYNs actually don't perform abortions. And I think that that's a very clear indicator of that they know that that's a life growing inside of that mother, because they could do abortions. It's certainly within their technical expertise to be able to do them. So they could easily do them if they want to, but you know, they don't, because I think deep down inside, even if they don't consider themselves to be pro-life, I think deep down inside, they know that that's a human being deserving of our protection.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, I think right now there's a lot happening. You know, we're seeing so much growth in this movement. We have the textbook heartbeat law that went into effect that's saving preborn babies the moment a heartbeat is detected. You know, we have Dobbs v. Jackson as we're awaiting the decision of that. So much is happening. You know, even the Guttmacher Institute said that 2021 was the most anti-abortion year we've ever seen in legislation.
Amen.
And so I think there's so much for us to hold on to and continue to build that momentum. But we also know that the pro-abortion side knows that, and which is why they are trying to expand chemical abortion in such a radical way. You know, what's your thoughts, or what would you like to say to people, and you know how we need to prepare ourselves for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're right. You know, unfortunately, chemical abortion is the next frontier for the abortion industry, and they've already started that push. You know, even back in 2000, when the medications were originally approved. The problem with this new push for chemical abortion is that it will essentially nullify any state laws that exist that restrict abortion, because women already now, because of the relaxation of the REMS, those safety measures that were originally put into place to govern the use of this medication, were lifted in a political move by the FDA in December. It was not based on science. I think that's important for anyone listening to this to know. People think of the FDA as a scientific agency, but at least in this decision was not based on any medical data, any scientific data. It was purely a political decision, and it's harming women. It's harming their children each and every day. And now women are able to obtain these medications through the mail. Even though still the FDA says they shouldn't be able to obtain them online, we know that women are obtaining them online from who knows where. You know, anyone who cares about women's health should care about this issue, regardless of where you stand on abortion. If you care about women's health, these medications are harmful for women. They're 4 times higher complication rate with a chemical abortion than with a surgical abortion. And you're right. It's, you know, the abortion industry is pushing for no holds barred, absolute access to chemical abortion at the cost of preborn children's lives and women's lives, as well as what we're going to see.
Right. I think it's proof that their pro-woman narrative is a lie.
Exactly.
Because if they cared about women, like you said, regardless of where you stand on abortion, it's proven that chemical abortion is 4 times more dangerous.
Absolutely.
And if we are sending this to anyone who orders it, not only women, but to abusive boyfriends or fathers who don't want their daughters to be pregnant, you know, we're putting it in the hands of potentially dangerous people too.
Absolutely.
You know, if you were pro-woman, then we would at least want restrictions on this. Not a send to whoever can order it on the internet. It's just, you know, it's terrifying that that's the road we're going, but I think it's also proof that pro-lifers need to be loud and bold more now than ever. You know, just because we have Roe v. Wade potentially reversed, that's huge, but it's not the end.
Absolutely. It's not the end. It really is just the beginning, because then the battle will return to the states and we can actually have conversations now with our state legislators and with each other within our own state of where we're going to stand on abortion. And I would encourage anyone who's listening to this, if you know someone who's contemplating a chemical abortion, you can go to our website at aaplog.org. You can go to the Students for Life website. I participated in the This is Chemical Abortion series that you all did, which is an excellent resource to find out about why these medications are so dangerous. And so I just would encourage anyone who's considering it or has a friend who's considering it to find out more before you would make that decision. And if you've been harmed by a chemical abortion in the past, we want to hear your stories. I know Students for Life wants to hear. We want to help you recover from that.
Absolutely. Well, if you could tell one thing to every pro-lifer in America today as we await the decision of Dobbs v. Jackson and are closer to a reversal of Roe, closer than we've ever been, what would you say to them?
I would say to stay strong and be encouraged that the pro-life movement is making amazing gains. And one of the things that makes me so excited is that the more we find out about medical science, the more we find out about the development of preborn human beings, the more it validates the pro-life position. So know that science is on our side, medicine is on our side. We are making gains. And, again, if Roe is overturned, which we are all hoping and praying that in June, that's the decision that comes down, then we need to increase our efforts even more, increase our efforts on a state level, and increase our efforts to support the women and their families that feel like abortion is their only choice. We need to offer them the hope that is life.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time and sitting down with us and sharing your area of expertise here. I think it's so important for people who are in the field to speak up, to say, I'm not going to perform abortions. Not only that, I'm going to educate people on what chemical abortion is, what abortion is, the effects of it. And so I applaud your conviction, especially in your field, and your continued dedication to this movement.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Thank you. Can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
If you are a pre-med student or a medical student who's watching this and you're contemplating either not going into medicine or not going into women's healthcare because you think that you'll be forced to perform abortions, know that we are here. Students for Life is here. APLOG is here to help support you, to defend your rights to practice pro-life medicine. So please, we need more pro-life people going into medicine. So I just encourage you to stick with it, stay the course, and rely on organizations like ours to defend your conscience rights.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, we're good.
Okay. Thanks so much. It was so nice to meet you.
Honestly, I think this actually... My next guest, I have here Congresswoman Letlow.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Autumn. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah, so is this your first march?
Well, my first, national march in D.C. It definitely did marches back home, but wow, this is an amazing experience.
It's something else. It's something else.
Yes.
I know, I always tell people, if you've never been to a March for Life, you got to make it a goal.
Yes.
You got to get there at least once.
Absolutely.
And then once you go once, you'll go forever.
Absolutely. I can understand why all my colleagues were up on that stage. That is electric.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, we would love to hear from you, why you're pro-life, but more importantly, what drives your force to be outspoken about it, your dedication to this movement. If you could just share with us more about that.
I've always considered myself pro-life. I grew up in a strong Christian family background. But, it wasn't until I had my first child and just growing a child in your womb there's nothing like it, having that miracle of life growing within you. And then when they placed Jeremiah's name and they placed him in my arms, I said, it's not enough for me to just say that I'm pro-life. I have to actively be out there fighting for the unborn. And the Lord has an amazing way of directing our paths. And I never thought I would be in Congress fighting for life at such a time as this, such a pivotal time in the whole movement. 48 years people have been working so hard for this one moment, and to be a part of it and to see it all come to fruition. It's just an absolute amazing experience to be a part of.
Yeah, I mean, 2021 was a record-breaking year for anti-abortion laws. We have the Texas heartbeat law that went into effect. We have Dobbs v. Jackson, which could potentially reverse Roe. I think it's so many things that we started to believe were never going to happen.
Exactly.
People that have been on the front lines since
Right.
Roe v. Wade
Right.
was created, the land of the law,
Sure,
you know, or the law of
sure,
the land. And so
sure.
it's so beautiful to see it all come together,
Right.
to see the pro-life generation continue to show
it.
up.
That's it. Think about how many times they probably got up and said, gosh, what am I even doing this for? Nothing's going
Absolutely.
to change.
Mhm.
And here we are. So it just goes to show you never give up.
Mhm.
Every little bit counts and matters.
Yeah, and just seeing the torch being passed. You come to the March for Life, and there are people from all walks of life, all ages, all backgrounds
Right.
coming together to stand shoulder to shoulder. So,
Right.
what would you say to every pro-lifer in America today as we await the
Sure.
Dobbs v. Jackson decision and are closer to a post-Roe America than we've ever been?
Sure, never give up. Never give up, because every little bit counts. Everything we do today affects tomorrow and has the potential to save millions of lives. So I am so grateful to everybody who has worked so hard. And that would be my message. Just never give up.
Wow. Well, thank you so much
Thank
for
you
taking
for
the time to
having
sit
me.
down with us. I hope you enjoy the
What an
rest of your
honor.
March.
All right, you too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I am so honored to sit down with our next guest. I have here with me Congressman Dan Crenshaw. Thank you so much for being here.
Great to be with you.
Today is a big day for so many of us pro-lifers, and it's such an encouragement to see so many strong, powerful pro-life leaders like yourself to be here in support of the pro-life generation. I know many of us sit in our own homes and think, I'm alone. Nobody believes what I believe. I can't make a difference. And, in many ways feel discouraged to speak up. But I think when we're here today, seeing people speak up for life, it encourages us to do more. So I'd love to hear from you. Why are you pro-life, and why are you convicted to speak out about it?
Yeah. First, I want to say I'm encouraged because the crowd here is very, very young.
Yeah.
You notice that
Yeah.
it's so young, and it's driven by love. That's the message, and that's why we're winning.
Mhm.
So that's what makes me so encouraged. Because I get to see my members of Congress every day. I love them, but I'm encouraged by
Right.
everybody else
Yeah.
out here. So why be pro-life? Look, I get a little philosophical on this sometimes, but I look back to our Declaration of Independence, which states very clearly what one of the purposes of government is, which is to protect your inalienable rights. And of those rights is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so I take life quite literally in that statement. It's a very, very basic human right. Why be pro-life? Because I'm pro-human rights.
Right.
It really is that simple. And over the last century, this conversation has devolved, or this sort of play on words has happened, where it's about choice, it's about convenience, it's part of your body, and these are untruths, these are falsehoods. It's not. So it's a baby when you want it, but
It's
it's
almost
not.
too simple, right?
Yeah, but it's not a baby. It's just
Yeah.
an appendage when you don't want it. This is nonsense, and we need to stop saying things that aren't true. Is it hard to have a newborn? Yes. So then let's move the conversation towards supporting new parents, towards adoption services. That's something I think conservatives can do better on, to be perfectly honest. But it can't be this conversation about this so-called choice, because it's not a choice at all. Whether someone lives or dies, that's not a choice. You should always be for life.
Absolutely. And I think it's really amazing to see the people here to hold that so proudly. I think we have too many people in America who are passively pro-life, who are pro-life but don't talk about it, don't do anything, whether it's because they believe it doesn't affect them, whether it's because they're scared of backlash. We need people who are on the front lines, bold and unapologetic. That's where we're going to see a difference. 2021 was a record-breaking year for anti-abortion laws, and most of that is because communities are driving the force. People are saying, I'm done with our culture glamorizing death. I am ready for a post-Roe generation, one that will hold the title proudly that I am anti-abortion because it kills a human being. And so I think we need more people that are willing to take that stand, but a line in the sand, black and white. Life should be protected in all circumstances. Today, what would you say to every pro-lifer in America as we await the decision for Dobbs v. Jackson and are closer to a post-Roe America than we've ever been?
Look, I would say hold your heads high, stand for your convictions proudly, and make the arguments with love as your primary directive. And that's, you want to know why the pro-life movement is winning? Because that changed over time.
And we are winning.
And we are winning. And the movement is winning because it is led with love.
Yeah.
When I look out there, And I see the signs. It's not about hate. Nobody's attacking anybody. Everybody is happy.
Yeah.
There's this like profound sense of happiness, and then I think that comes from the fact that people know that they're standing for something that is righteous.
Absolutely.
Standing for human life, I think, is righteous. So look, it's hard to predict what will happen in the Supreme Court, and I don't want to give anybody any false optimism.
Right. Absolutely.
Regardless of what happens, you're winning the fight.
Right.
And that fight will be much longer term than just this Supreme Court decision. That will merely be a battle that maybe we win.
Yeah.
But the fight will continue because then it goes down to the state level. And you must win the culture to then pave the way for the legislation that is pro-life. That is always how, because if you don't do that, well, then you're going to take 3 steps back for every step forward.
Yeah.
So keep winning the culture. Keep winning the arguments. Make the arguments with love in your heart. Talk about the science. Talk about the philosophy. Use whatever tools you need, because you know what? Whether it's religious or whether it's more of a humanist approach or whether it's a scientific approach, they all align.
Right.
They all align in the same place, and that's the beauty of this movement. I think it's why the pro-choice movement, so-called, is losing.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and I think that point is really important. When you come to the March for Life, I've been in the pro-life movement full-time since I was 16, and something that I hear constantly is the pro-life movement is all old white men.
Yeah,
I hear it constantly. But I always say, you've clearly never been to the March for Life, because you step outside of this tent, you look around. It is so diverse, not only in people's backgrounds, but their age. There are people who have been here since Roe v. Wade was created a law. And there are people who have only known a world where Roe v. Wade was a law. And so I think it's so powerful to see that torch being carried. The pro-life generation to say, we may not have been there beginning of this fight, but we're gonna be there till the end. And it's so powerful. We have students in all 50 states working in their communities to not only change laws, but to change hearts, to change the culture, because that's when we're gonna win here. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here, and thank you for taking time to chat with us.
Thank you for what you guys do. It's amazing work.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. My next guest here, I have Mike Donaghy. Thank you so much for joining us.
You said it so well, Autumn. Thank you.
So I would love to hear from you why you're pro-life, what brought you to the March for Life, and what drives your passion to be outspoken about this movement.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm pro-life because I think Jesus is pro-life. So I'm for life in all its forms and facets. And I grew up coming to the March for Life. My dad was head of communications for National Right to Life, so I grew up marching. And so I got the chance to come back and be a part of the prayer service this morning and said, let's go.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Something that I've heard a few times today is the March for Life was kind of the kickstart for them of what drove their passion for the pro-life movement. I think many of us are pro-life, but we don't realize there's a movement to join. I remember feeling that at 16. I kind of jumped in the pro-life movement, and my eyes were opened to a movement of people that are fighting, people who are marching, advocates, activists. And so I think being here, it's just so encouraging, and you just see the light in everybody's eyes of this is something that I'm going to dedicate my life to and be passionate about. I'm sure you can speak to that in the many years that you came growing up.
Absolutely.
Was it a motivation for you to come to then do more? Every time we're here.
Yeah, I mean, when you're a kid, you're always looking for something to be a part of, and so coming and seeing it was amazing.
Yeah,
I will say it really helped. It also, ironically, helped inform me how to communicate with people who are very pro-abortion, because they would say, "Oh, you anti-abortion people, right? They wouldn't call us pro-life. You're against women. You're against women's rights. You're not trying to help anybody." And I could see where they would say some of that, because there did used to be a lot more signs of like aborted baby pictures and very like sort of condemning messages. And what's really excited me as I've watched the pro-life movement progress since a child, there really is a multifaceted full picture movement that I feel like is emerging, where people are realizing, okay, we can't tell women you can't have an abortion if we're not willing to help that woman have that baby, to give her the help she needs. And so I'm really excited to see people really take on the task of the whole challenge, which is stopping abortion and caring for these unwanted pregnancies.
Yeah, absolutely. Students for Life has an initiative called Standing With You, and that's the entire heart of it, to say, whether you are a pregnant and parenting student or you find yourself in an unexpected pregnancy, how can we walk alongside you? Because for many of us women, there are resources, they just don't know about them. And so it's how can we connect them with a pregnancy resource in their area? So we've done pretty much everything to, online campaigns to door knocking. We send students out into their own communities to knock on doors and to say, are you aware of the life-affirming resources that are in your community? And we've seen such beauty come out of that for people to then equip themselves with information on how to help people in their own area and their community. And so I agree. I think it's so important for us to proudly hold the title, I am anti-abortion, but I'm also here to walk alongside women.
Yeah, my own mom was a victim of an assault when she was younger and had an unwanted pregnancy and made an adoption plan for that child. And we just spent Christmas all together, right, with her family. And I really am excited to see people not only take up the task of dismantling abortion, but taking up the task of adopting and taking up the task of caring for women. And I think it's a noble task and one that I'm ready to give my life to.
Yeah, that's amazing. If you could say one thing to every pro-lifer in America as we await the Dobbs v. Jackson case and could potentially see a reversal of Roe v. Wade, what would you like to say to them?
Yeah, celebrate the victory, but know that it's the first step in many steps. Yeah. And please don't celebrate if you're not willing to take up the task of helping these women. Yeah. That really, I can't say it enough, but the multifaceted picture that exists around this problem. When pro-lifers are known for the care they're offering to women and children, man, that's when this movement's really going to take off.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
It's so good to see you here at the March for Life with so many other amazing pro-life advocates. It's been such an honor and a pleasure to speak with everybody.
Glad to be here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
My next guest that I have here with me today is Brian Kemper. Thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you. Thank you for being on my TikTok yesterday.
Absolutely. It's got to be a back and forth,
Absolutely.
50-50.
Exactly.
Pro-life Jen, all got to help each other, right?
Absolutely.
Well, today I would love to just hear your heart on why you're pro-life and what brings you to the March for Life and what motivates you to be outspoken about the pro-life movement.
Well, I came to the March for Life thinking I was going to finally get to meet Kristen Hawkins and be on her
sorry.
podcast.
I feel like such a disappointment.
But then I got blessed and it's Autumn. No. I'm pro-life. I was not raised in a Christian family at all. I was supposed to be aborted. In 1966, my mother tried to find an illegal abortion and wasn't able to. And I grew up drugs and a lot of just really evil stuff. And in 1987, I overdosed and almost died. And it was a doctor in a hospital who shared Christ with me. Wow. And a week later, I was at a Christian punk rock concert. A band called The Crucified did a song called The Silent Scream. And I went and talked to them about it. And that sort of sparked my interest. And it started growing from there and studying and learning the fact that there are human beings on this planet that are not protected, that are supposed to be in the safest place on earth for an unborn child, their mother's womb. Yeah. And that's just not going on. And so that for me sparked my pro-life. And then I went into an abortion mill undercover and was passing out pro-life literature. I would sit by the magazine rack and stick pro-life literature in all the magazines. Wow. And that day, because of an accident with the door opening, I ended up seeing an abortion take place. And I went home that night and I was praying and I was crying out to God in the shower. And I heard a voice that said, Brian, save my children. And I knew from that moment on, this is what I was going to dedicate my life to.
Wow, powerful. I think it's I love hearing, that moment where people decided, I'm going to do this. Regardless of the backlash, regardless of the fear of feeling ill-equipped for this next chapter, but just the willingness to say yes, to do it. I was 16 when I said yes, and looking back, I laughed because I knew so little. And it's crazy to see those times in our lives where in the moment, you don't realize even what you're stepping into, but looking at just the growth and all that God has done in the years that I have been in the pro-life movement and just seeing where we are now and coming to the March for Life. This is my 4th March for Life. And every single year I'm here, I'm just blown away by the people that come, all different walks of life,
Yeah.
all different ages, to stand shoulder to shoulder to say, regardless of maybe other beliefs we disagree with, this is where we are not going to compromise.
My first March for Life was 1994.
Mm.
My second March for Life, I actually came with a friend of mine named Eric, who was dating this girl named Tina, who
feel like
might
I
be
might
your
know,
boss.
Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about.
So yeah, I've been coming for a long time.
Wow, that's amazing. If you could say one thing to every pro-lifer in America as we approach the potential reversal of Roe v. Wade, as we await the decision of Dobbs v. Jackson, what would you say to them?
I don't know if I'm going to give the same answer a lot of people give, but I'm going to say learn grace and mercy. We are going into a time where there are so many people who really do believe the rhetoric of the other side and who really do believe that we hate women and that we want to take away women's rights. And if you've ever really sat down with a woman that's contemplating abortion, to understand how we must show them grace and mercy.
Absolutely.
I think sometimes, to be honest, Christians, we understand the grace and mercy that God gives us, but we haven't learned how to give that to others. We need to, as this comes, learn how to be that resource, to be that light for those women that are scared to death. That's not going to change. There are going to be women every day who find out they're pregnant and who are scared to death. And I think we as a pro-life movement need to learn the best way to show them that grace, show them that mercy, and become the reason there's never even a reason to think about abortion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's important to me.
Yeah. Something that actually you mentioned that has been on my heart lately that I've just been praying about is I think a lot of times we just assume that they're on an opposite side because they know something else or because they want to fight with us. But something that God has been softening my heart to lately is the reason they're on that side is because they don't know.
Yeah.
And I think that perspective oftentimes can allow us to give more grace, right? It's a child. When they misbehave, you think, well, they're young, right? They don't know better. You can have more grace for them, I think, when you know somebody is being defiant, right? You kind of stubbornness kicks in. And I think we do have the potential to do that in the pro-life movement, to kind of stiffen our backs and to be angry towards these people who are angry at us.
For me, that moment, I think, really hit me when my teenage daughter had to come to me and say, Daddy, I'm pregnant. And I just picked her up and I hugged her and I just said, I love you. And she says, Daddy, aren't you mad at me? No, baby. You just told me I'm a grandpa.
Yeah.
And that moment really opened my eyes to what we must be doing for these young girls. And my daughter has now 2 kids, amazing grandchildren, and she loves for me to tell the story. But I think that moment was like, I've had these aha moments throughout my life.
Yeah.
But that moment was one of the most important is how do we react? And I think that Christians, especially pro-lifers, we have to understand people in our own families are going to go through those situations.
Yeah.
And the first words out of our mouth need to be, I love you.
Yeah. And not only for those who are maybe facing that situation, but women who have gone through it and decided abortion. I know many people have come to me and said, I'm scared to speak out about the pro-life movement because I don't want to hurt those in my life that may be post-abortive. And what I say to them is, you may be hurting them more by being silent about it.
Absolutely.
Because by being silent about it, you're not trusting that God can offer overwhelming healing to those who have suffered an abortion.
Absolutely.
And so I think, again, we have to walk through this with love and compassion to change the narrative that we're not angry, bitter pro-lifers who hate women, right? If we're going to combat that narrative, then we have to do it through our actions to show people what we're doing in the pro-life movement. And I think this is an amazing event to showcase that. You look at the people, they're joyful, they're happy, they're loving. You read their signs. It's one of my favorite parts about the march is because oftentimes people will put their story on a sign and hold it up and to say, this is who I am or this is why I'm here. And it's always so powerful to just see the diversity in people that come.
And that's one of the things I love about like Silent No More, when you have these women that just hold a sign that just says, I regret my abortion. And people will just come up and talk to them and ask them questions.
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for all that you do and for taking a few minutes to
Absolutely.
come chat with us. We appreciate you. And
next time I get to meet the amazing Kristen
I
Hawkins.
hope so. Yes.
Wow, that would just...
I promise you.
Oh,
I'll make it happen. I'll make it happen. Well, thank you so much.
All right. God bless you. Thank you.